So we've been going through the letter to the Romans, the book of Romans, for the last number of months, and we're in chapter 12, which is kind of the more practical section of the book, and this part deals a lot with how we're to relate with other people, and so we're actually going through it fairly slowly, and as we'll see as we look at it today, for many of us at least, if it wasn't for Jesus, I think we'd be very different than what we're going to see today. At least I would be. I really believe Jesus really has made my life very different than I would be without Jesus. And so we'll see various examples of that. We all at some point, hopefully unintentionally, wrong other people. But we also end up being wronged, and so some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is talking about this whole thing of how to respond when we're wronged. And the temptation, as we'll talk about, is often to retaliate. And even sometimes as Christians, we want to retaliate to something that's done against us. As we'll see, Jesus' way is very different. And so why don't we jump right in? What I'm going to call my message today is genuine caring relationships. And as I mentioned, we're in Romans chapter 12. So we're going to look at chapter 12, just 3 verses today, verses 14, 15, and 16. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. So let me just jump right in with the first part here. Bless those who wrong you or those who harm you. In our text, as you can see there, Paul says, bless those who persecute you. Now, many of us don't really get persecuted a whole lot for our faith. There are certainly degrees of that going on in North America. There's an overall intolerance on the part of various people who aren't believers to Christians. Just a few examples that you may be familiar with. Trinity Western University, for example, has been unable to grant certain degrees because they're a Christian university, and that happened with their teaching degree, happened with their law degree. That's an example of persecution in some ways. It might not be the way that we think of at different times. Christians often get a bad rap in the media, various TV shows. Someone who's a pastor is he's a real goofball over here, someone that nobody really likes. That's how it's portrayed. Those of you that still remember Stockwell Day when he was in government, as a really solid Christian, was attacked numerous times because of his Christian beliefs. Related to what we're talking about here in terms of, blessing those that persecute us, sometimes, we just go, yeah, of course, yeah, bless those who persecute you. I don't know how many of you remember, I don't remember their names. It was a couple that they spoke at our Good Friday service a number of years ago, and they also shared here in our church at one point. They were out on missions, and again, I don't remember all the details, in Africa somewhere, and she was actually raped as a result of the stuff they were doing there. He was severely beaten. And so they actually end up leaving there, and you think, oh, bless those who persecute you. What? Now, like I say, we're not dealing with a lot of that, and that's why I've rephrased this a little bit. Bless those who wrong you. Don't just stumble over the persecution part, because all of us, unfortunately, we also, that's why I said in the beginning, we all, hopefully unintentionally, will wrong somebody or offend somebody somewhere, but he's specifically addressing the whole thing of how we respond when somebody wrongs us. I've shared this once a number of years ago, but I remember we were on Main Street in our car driving along. We were stopping at the stoplight at Main and heading this way, Main and Duncan, right by Dairy Queen there, and so we were stopped for the red light, and some teens came walking across the street right towards our car, and one guy spit on my window with a big goober right at my face. I don't know if any of you would have a huge desire to retaliate at that point, but I had to do everything within my power to stay seated in my car and not jump out of my car and do something. I don't even know what I would have done, but there's an example of bless those who wrong you. I don't know if I was blessing them at that point, but I didn't outwardly retaliate. Let me just say a few things about the blessing and the cursing, and in many ways I know we know what it means, but sometimes it's helpful just to elaborate a little bit on that. To bless means to praise, to favor, to make happy. Any kind of good that we do to a person that they would appreciate. Really? Hey, God bless you for spitting a big goober on my window, you know. No, not quite, but somehow in our hearts, like, really, bless those who wrong you, bless and don't curse. And again, to curse, I know we know what it means, but again, to call down injury on a person, to ask God to do that. Expression of hatred or anger. To damn somebody, you know, that's a common phrase as a swear word, damn you. Really, it's cursing somebody is really what it is, to swear at, to use profane language against. So Paul here, God, is calling us to operate in an opposite spirit that is really contrary to how we might just naturally be wired. We can sometimes just be prone to, we might not call it cursing, but just to be upset at things, at people, at somebody does something wrong, and we just get into complaining. We get into talking about how others do things wrong. I think that can, if it's not, it can very easily lead into a form of cursing. We're just cursing all the time. We may not swear, we may not use profane language, but we can just be stating the negative. Oh, I can't believe what this person did, you know. And so I believe he's calling us to a whole different way of relating to others. Now, my question, and I know the obvious answer, but was Jesus like this? Who said no? Why are you saying no? I want to at least get us to think. Why are you saying no? Oh, okay, you're saying he did bless. Oh, okay. No, I'm asking the other question. Anybody want to be, no, not the devil's advocate, but do you know what I'm asking? Like, we just automatically go, but what does it actually mean? That's what I'm trying to get at a little bit here. Like, Jesus called people whitewashed tombs. You know, like, he said some pretty strong things to people sometimes. Now, at the same time, the obvious is, for example, when Jesus was on the cross and people are ultimately persecuting him, they are literally killing him. And Jesus' response is, Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is it doesn't mean just being this wet noodle that has no backbone. Like, there's a difference between the two. It doesn't just mean our definition of always just the ultimate nice guy that would just never, ever say anything contrary. I don't think that's what it means. Like Jesus especially stood up to the religious leaders. Why? Because he really believed they were misrepresenting what God was, and they were the representative of God to the people. And Jesus felt very strongly about that and said, you guys, you are missing it. And so he was not afraid to say those things. And so when we talk about blessing and not cursing, it doesn't mean that we're just this ultimately nice guy that nobody could ever get riled up about anything. Like, does that make sense, the difference between the two? Let me give you another example. Actually, this might be a little bit of an example of the contrary, and actually, it actually shows me that the Bible is real. Okay? This is the Apostle Paul who's writing this. Bless those who persecute you. Okay? Some of you probably already know the passage I'm referring to. Acts 23, 1-5. Paul, he's on trial there. Paul looked straight at the Sanhedrin and said, my brothers, I have fulfilled my duty to God in all good conscience to this day. At this, the high priest Ananias ordered those standing near Paul to strike him on the mouth. Whack on the mouth. Paul said to him, God will strike you, you whitewashed wall. You sit there and judge me according to the law, yet you yourself violate the law by commanding that I be struck. Does that sound like blessing those who curse you? Those who were standing near Paul said, how dare you insult God's high priest? Paul replied, oh, brothers, sorry, I did not realize that he was the high priest. For it is written, do not speak evil about the ruler of your people. In other words, because he's the high priest, oh shoot, I wasn't supposed to speak that way to the high priest. But if he wasn't the high priest, so I don't know, how do you interpret that passage? I think it might just be Paul was kind of human sometimes too. You know, like somebody just whacked him on the mouth and he didn't like it. But interestingly enough, just before this, oh no, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. No, cancel what I just said. That's the next story. So my point here is God does intend for this to become an overall lifestyle, though, of where we bless instead of curse. We don't have in us this thing of just being upset at people and being bugged when they wrong us. We just retaliate and we just respond in that way. But rather, God calls us and he empowers us to actually live in an opposite spirit where we want to bless instead of curse. We're wronged, things come against us, and we don't respond in like manner. Just to quote a passage from Jesus where he's quoted, but I tell you who hear me, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. So here he's not even talking about persecution. Just bless those who curse you. Bless those who do something wrong against you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn to him the other also. If someone takes your cloak, do not stop him from taking your tunic. That is very contrary to, someone takes your jacket, you just say, oh, do you want my shirt too? I don't know if I should pick up my wife, but I may not get many more chances to do this from up front. But I remember she came running up to the office one day from being in the free store, and she had this really nice jacket that she just loved. Someone just took my jacket, because it's a free store, right? You can take whatever you want. Like, she was just like, ah, she was beside herself, So she went running back down, and anyways, found out who it was, and that jacket was not one of the free ones. Like, that was actually my jacket. If someone takes your jacket, give them your shirt. Really? So it is the whole thing. Sometimes Jesus used hyperbole to really make a point, but the point is to learn to bless instead of curse, to not respond in like manner, to not retaliate. And just one other example of this whole thing of not just taking, doesn't mean just taking whatever comes. Doesn't mean if there's an injustice done that we just go, okay, whatever injustice can be done against me, just let it happen. There is a right way, but it's how we do it that I think makes a difference. And so one more example from Paul, Acts chapter 16, verse 37. So let me just back up. This is in Philippi. Remember, they were preaching stuff and they got thrown in jail. They were beaten first, and they're put in stocks. And what are they doing at night, midnight? They're singing worship to God, right? They are worshiping God. And then, God causes an earthquake to happen and everything breaks off. Their locks weren't as good, I guess, in those days. But the jailer becomes a Christian and everybody else is still there and everything else. So you see Paul's response to being we're talking beaten with rods. And you see his response of worshiping God. But then look at his response here. It's very interesting in light of some of the stuff we're saying here. So they said, okay, let these guys go. Paul said to the officers, they beat us publicly without a trial, even though we are Roman citizens, and threw us into prison. And now do they want to get rid of us quietly? No, let them come themselves and escort us out. Really? In other words, and when they found out that Paul and the others were Roman citizens, they were like, oh my goodness, we just blew it. Like he could just really get us in trouble. Like you read the story. And they came and, oh, sorry guys, we didn't realize you're Roman citizens, Sorry we beat you so bad, And so they let them go. My point is there's a place for justice, but how we do it makes all the difference. But within that, there's still this whole thing of blessing those who curse us. So let's just jump ahead to the other verses here. Verse 15, rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn. Now, this doesn't mean that God's advocating some kind of, that we're to live in some kind of codependent relationship where if someone's happy, I'm happy. If someone's not happy around me, then I'm not happy. And, we're up and down like a yo-yo depending on how people around us are doing. That's not what he's describing at all. But what he is describing is that we really have an honest, genuine empathy for people around us. And so just to go through that really quickly, share each other's joys. Family is someone that you call, and I'm not talking just about our actual, nuclear family, but family is someone you call when you know that they're going to share your joys. I like the story that Nicky Gumbel tells on Alpha where I believe it was when their first child was born, their son, and this was back before the days of cell phones, and so he had all his coins in the pocket for calling people as soon as their child was born, and so their son was born, and he called, I think Pippa's his wife's mother first, and called her and said, "Hey, we got a son, da da da," and all happy, and so then dialed his mother, and "Hey, we got a son, da da da," and then he had a whole list of people that Pippa had said, "Okay, call all these people, let them know that we've had a child," and da da da. Everybody he called already knew. We gladly tell somebody else good news if we know they're going to be glad with us. It goes fast. And so one of the things that he calls us to is, you guys, if someone's happy, be happy with them. And we might think, of course, but the reality is at different points, some of us can be either jealous or envious or why did they spend that much money on that thing? I don't think they should have bought that. And, we can get all kinds of other motives mixed in there, and yet he calls us just rejoice with those who rejoice. Someone's excited about something, be genuinely excited with them. Be genuinely happy with them. Don't judge them. And conversely, grieve with each other. Mourn with those who mourn. Feel along with each other in things that various ones are going through. As you know, if you've been part of this church, we've had a number of deaths here in the last years. and people going through really difficult things. And I have to say that there's a whole bunch of you that I look at as great examples of this, of grieving with those who grieve, and not just expressing it, but really being there for those people. And we're, in this sense, we're called to be family. We're called to come alongside each other. It can be illness. It can be someone just going through a really hard time with something. We can't all do that for everybody, but we can come alongside each other. And like I say, there's a whole bunch of you that I look at as fantastic examples of that. And so he really calls us to this thing of, sometimes we just want to be happy, so we don't want to grieve with somebody. And sometimes we don't know how to express our sharing of the grief. And you know what? We don't have to say a lot sometimes. I remember Brian Dirksen sharing at one point. They had this, it was almost like a son to them, and really close relationship with them, and he died. And I remember Brian sharing that someone else that they knew, really close to them, came and I believe made a meal for them, didn't say anything the whole time they were there. And he said, you know what? That was the most meaningful sharing of our grief that anybody brought. Because there wasn't anything to say. They just came and were there. And so the whole thing of just mourning with each other, again, I'm not talking about codependent relationship. I'm just talking about coming alongside each other, being genuine in wanting to be there with them. And then number 4, live in harmony with one another. Verse 16 says exactly that. That's a big statement. You know what? One of the things that the New Testament comes down on hardest is discord and ones that cause division within the body. Titus chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. But avoid foolish controversies and genealogies and arguments and quarrels about the law, because these are unprofitable and useless. In other words, let me just say something about that. We might say, well, we're not into genealogies. No, but you know what? Sometimes we can get bent out of shape about the dumbest things. And that's really what he's saying is, don't get all bent out of shape about things that don't really matter a lot. Okay? Don't ever let those things become things that divide within a church. Let's be about the real important things. Let's be about the things that really matter. And then he makes a really strong statement. Warn a divisive person once, and then warn them a second time. After that, have nothing to do with them. Wow. Warn a divisive person once. Warn them a second time. Hey, man, don't go down this road. Like, you're being destructive. This is not helpful. So it really comes down hard on that. That doesn't mean that we can't have disagreements with each other. I remember, there's an old story, I remember John Wimber, who was the leader and founder of our movement for many years. I remember him sharing the story of someone who was a home group leader, and he had previously been a pastor where in that church they practiced infant baptism. And so people in his group were saying, hey, can you, tell us about that? We're just interested, where you even get that from, da-da-da. So he went to John and said, they're asking me to do this, what should I do? And he says, go ahead and talk to them about it, but don't you dare become divisive, because I will come down really hard on you. And there's a difference between disagreeing and becoming divisive. When we become divisive, we start to cause people to realize, in this case, why the leadership of that church was wrong, or why what they believe was wrong, and why this is right, and try to draw people after yourself. You see the difference between the two? You can talk about how we disagree, and of course when we have this many people as we have here this morning, we're going to have disagreements about things. It's how we disagree. And to do that in a way that we continue to bless others and actually continue to have high value for each other. It includes, obviously, the whole thing of having the same goals, working towards the common. These are the key things we're about. Let's be about those things. Let's move towards those things. This obviously was not what Paul had in mind, but I think of, when I think of live in harmony, I think of when people sing in harmony to each other, they're not competing against each other. They're singing in a way to complement each other. If people are singing in harmony, it's a blend that makes each other sound better. And that, I think, is a good analogy of what God calls us to. Live in harmony with each other, where what you're doing, you're different, but what you bring actually complements the other person. And then the last one here, fifth one is include people who are different than you are. Verse 16, do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. The New Living Translation says, don't try to act important, but enjoy the company of ordinary people, and don't think you know it all. Pride is a key thing that keeps us from associating with certain people. It's interesting, some of the things that the Bible says about pride. Actually, I got them up here already. Sorry, no, I don't. Proverbs 15:25, the Lord destroys the house of the proud, but he protects the property of widows. Proverbs 16, verse 5, the Lord despises pride. Be assured that the proud will be punished. If we're proud, we elevate ourselves. We somehow think we're more. we're better, we're greater than other people. And he's specifically calling us, says, don't be proud. You got to be willing to see everybody as having value and come alongside people that may be different than we are. The opposite, obviously, is putting value on each other. Putting value on people that are different than we are. Not judging others on the basis of what they do or their economic status. And so, a natural question here might be, who do you see that is not just a natural fit for you relationally? Anybody got anybody in this room that might not just be a natural fit for them relationally? So how can we still come alongside each other and bless each other? How can we value each other, even though you may not be you can't be best friends with everybody in this room. But he does call us to be willing to associate with all different people and to honestly love and honestly care. And so, if we're living according to God's kingdom, his way of relating is very different than we might just be on our own. And he calls us to a higher standard. He calls us to that place of having genuine, caring relationships. And so I just want to call us again. Like I said, this part of Romans is just the practical, day-to-day stuff. I just want to call us again to this whole thing of, hey guys, let's let the Holy Spirit just really empower us to be like this. And it's got applications. I mean, all week long, we've got opportunity to apply this stuff. It applies all over. And so my prayer is that we'll be these kind of people. So let's have the worship team come up. We're going to end with communion today. And so we'll do a song and we'll invite you to receive communion in just a bit. And During that time, as we often say, if there are things today that you would like prayer for specifically, feel free to grab somebody. Feel free to come up here if you'd like prayer. And at the same time, just the stuff that we've talked about, because we've talked about relational stuff here. and I'm thinking God may just go, hey, you know what? Why don't you go talk to that person or that person or that person? Just let God direct us in terms of how we relate to each other during the communion. So let's stand together. And if you can receive these elements, the bread and the juice, if you can receive those as the body and the blood of Christ, we invite you to receive those. There's a station on each side here and one at the back over here. This is representing, again, just a great reminder of the grace that Jesus had for us and has for us. And that's why we're to do it regularly, just to remind ourselves, wow, look at what he's done for us. And so let's pray towards that, and then I'll dismiss us kind of officially after we've all received the communion. Lord Jesus, thank you for, as we've talked about relationships, thank you for modeling that for us. Thank you for the way that you gave your life. You laid down your life for us, and yet you stood for truth. You stood for what really mattered. You didn't just let things slide just out of being nice in some way, but you showed genuine love. You loved the lepers. You loved the ones that were sick, the ones that needed help. Lord, you came for us. And so, Lord, I just pray for us today. I pray that as we've talked about relationships, I pray for the empowering of your Spirit for us to really be this way. And Lord, wherever you want to just show us where you want to change us, I pray for that right now. I pray that you would just, for each of us individually, if there are ways that you want to just give us even a different mindset, either towards a specific person or specific situations. Lord, we pray that we would be these kind of people. And so, Lord, thank you for giving your life for us. Thank you for literally dying so that our sin could be paid for, so we wouldn't have to pay for it ourselves. Thank you that we have grace because of that. So, Lord, we receive your body and your blood as just a reminder again of your great love for us, your great gift to us. Thank you, Lord.